So yes, I'm going to talk about the fact that from my perspective, CRM strategies don't need CRM systems. And this is after many years of being asked to implement CRM systems. I've got some perspectives that I'm going to share with you guys about the best way as I see it, about sort of doing CRM or implementing CRM. This is the summary for the presentation, which has already been read out, so that's that one done. And then I was just going to do just a couple of intro slides about myself. So I've been doing IT from pretty much the age of about 16. I've worked for British Aerospace, working on avionics systems for the Harrier. I've worked in the oil and gas industry, doing safety systems, process control systems. And then more recently, I've spent 13 years working for the John Lewis Partnership, working in the central IT teams, running the mainframe systems and wide area networks and infrastructure. And I moved into the businesses where I focused more specifically on e-commerce as it was then, and then it's multi-channel, and then it's omni-channel. So that's sort of the background there. I now work for Historic Royal Palaces. So we run the 5 palaces, Hampton Court Palace, Kensington Palace, Kew Palace, Banting House, and Tower of London. And our cause our challenge is to help everyone explore the story of how monarchs and people have shaped society in some of the greatest palaces ever built. I should know that off by heart, and I do normally, but anyway, a bit not my nerves. And so, so I do all the IT for the organisation, and in many respects we're, I think, a £100 million revenue, or aspiring to be a £100 million revenue generator. Or in revenue we have 5 million visitors a year, or 4.5 I think this year. So we're a pretty big organisation. My CRM credentials are, I don't know if any of you know your old CRM systems, but I've put Siebel in a number of times within WeightTrace. I've put some e-commerce platforms in that have very powerful CRM capability, IBM WebSphere Commerce Suite, for example, fantastic segmentation engine, great big emailing sort of capabilities, and all the stuff you'd expect. And then more recently, before I left WeightTrace, I worked on the My WeightTrace loyalty card, which some of you may have in your pockets, some of you may not. So then I'll talk a bit about that a bit later. And I think for me, I always say that technology is the enabler. If you're a pilot, as a pilot I need a map to tell me where I am. If you're running an oil rig, you need a safety system to make sure the oil rig doesn't catch fire, or to keep people safe. And if you're a store manager, you need an intranet to share information with your staff. So these are all good sort of user stories that IT can help and deliver technology, and technology can help deliver them. As an e-commerce manager, I'd like to sell products online, and so websites are the solution for that. And it all works quite well when we're in that sort of space. And it's down to, I always say, it's actually down to how the technology is exploited or used. You can give a fuel gauge on a car. It doesn't matter how much tech goes into that, people still run out of petrol. On a safety system, one of the biggest challenges is people overriding it. So and there's been a number of fires on oil rigs and oil refineries where the main cause is when they've investigated has been that the system's been overridden, or some aspect of it has been. And so, again, you can have these great systems, but it's down to how people use them. And finally, this one I like, one of my favourite pictures. This Harrier, this is in Falklands. The pilot got lost, he couldn't find the aircraft carrier, and he landed it on a container ship. So again, he had a great map system, great navigation aids, but at the end of the day, he got lost. I think the story on this is he actually was told off or reprimanded because he should have ditched it rather than put it on a container ship, because basically it was salvageable in the end, or someone claimed salvage on it, and there was the best thing for it to have been to have gone into the water. So, what's wrong with buying a CRM system? I would ask you. And the industry seems to be, whenever I talk to people about CRM, a lot of people seem to talk about CRM systems going in, failing, or not delivering what was expected of them. I did a search on Google and just found one headline: 63% of implementations fail. What we mean by fail, I don't know. But if you look around, there's a number of examples where they fail, or they're not exploited, or they don't deliver the benefits. And I think for me, there's a paradox with CRM systems. Unlike many IT developments, the system is seen as the answer. I've been asked many times, We want the CRM system to grow our sales. We want a CRM system for our e-commerce website. Yeah, people just ask for the CRM system. This one. We want a CRM system for our loyalty scheme. Finally, we want the CRM to reduce our customer complaints. People use a CRM system as the solution they need, rather than looking at their business processes. And then why is that? Why is the mindset there? And if you read the various marketing literature from the CRM providers, why wouldn't you buy a CRM system? They use phrases like improves membership management, cuts costs, and develops strong personalised relationships with stakeholders. Now I'd buy one of those if I was a CIO of an organisation. Build brand, engage one-to-one. Your business make every customer interaction extraordinary. Now these are great. If you buy a system, I genuinely believe people buy systems thinking that that's what it's going to do. But actually, the CRM system will only ever deliver the capability. It doesn't, and that is, it's a suite of software that does stuff with data as you request it. And so we heard in the previous presentation a lot about doing stuff with the data, capturing it, and things like that. And so, for me, I think it's important that organisations, they do CRM. It's my sort of pushback. So when someone says to me, we'd like a CRM system, I'd say, well, why don't we do CRM? Let's think about doing CRM. And so the kind of stories I like to hear is, I'd like to survey customers to find out if they like their visit. That's a different mindset. That's not saying I need a system, that's saying I'd like to do something. There's many more of these. I came up with some. I'd like to tell all my customers about what's on next week. That's thinking about, that now you can do that with a spreadsheet and an emailing engine. You don't need a CRM system. I'd like to increase memberships. We're offering reduced rates to local residents. Again, that's another story that is about the business thinking what to do. A CRM system helps that. And finally, I want to create an offer that will drive customers to our cafes during quiet times. Again, it's a business outcome that's being targeted there. And so I sort of say, well, when we say CRM, what do we mean? We know it means customer relationship management. I think some people now say customer relationship marketing, depending on who's doing presentation. But for me, it's just an aspect of customer engagement or visitor engagement. And I think, for me, it's the success in this is thinking, how do we engage the visitor throughout the acquisition life cycle? And that's sort of before they sort of either visit us or come to us online, during their visit, and then after or post the visit, and that's the re-engagement. And in our sector, we've got specific areas around this. We tell stories, which is how we try to re-engage people. We have a lot of visitors who do some pre-work, they look at the websites before they come and visit. We have a big education set up, so we have a full cycle here, and it really is about working out how to engage the visitors or how to engage a customer, and then the CRM system is a component of that. It makes it happen. And this is a slide I did a couple of years ago for HRP as part of the start of our digital strategy, and I've introduced this idea that it is about thinking, how do we engage our visitors before they visit the palaces, during the visit to the palaces, be that an online visit or a physical visit to one of the palaces or a virtual visit online, and then their memory or their recollection, and how do we re-engage. And at the heart of all of this is looking for mechanisms for capturing data. We talked earlier about email address. It's getting the organisation's mindset around when they do an event, let's think, how are we going to engage with the audience, how are we going to capture some information from them. And it is quite, even in previous organisations, it's quite a struggle sometimes to get things like the website put on an advert or some sort of call to action around branches, be it, or on our palaces to try and capture or engage people to get their email addresses. We have an audio guide system, a lot of organisations do. We're looking at the redevelopments of that, and that should have a call to action to capture an email address somehow. We have to incentivise it. It's a fantastic opportunity to just get this information. The CRM system won't get the information. It's getting the mindset of the business thinking, we've got to capture information so we can re-engage with we can engage with our customers. And also at the heart of it has to be, for every organisation, you've got to have your set of principles that the organisation abides by. So you've got to be careful how you message. Are you a Tesco's or are you a WeightTrace? So you've got to be careful how you capture this information. It's got to be on brand, effectively. And so just looking at some examples, we're talking about the organisation. So it's making sure on your websites that you've got the right opt-in messages for transactions, like opt-in and opt-outs. We're having a debate at the moment around service emails and how far can you go with a service email. Toys R Us recently sent me an email asking me for a product review, which I thought they used it as a service email, but I thought it was marketing. So you have to be quite careful with that. Someone mentioned Wi-Fi landing pages. So we're just rolling out Wi-Fi. Grade 1 listed buildings are quite difficult to put Wi-Fi in, I have to say. But we've done it. And I think we're seeing about 20,000 registrations a month at the moment, or users a month, it's right to say. We don't have any email capture at the moment, so it's free Wi-Fi, no registration, just terms and conditions. And we're about to introduce opt-in email for that, so it's optional. And we're just going to start to see how many people opt in and play around with the messaging on that. The great thing about Wi-Fi, I mean, if you think about it, is exactly where they are. We know exactly which palace they're in, the time of day they're in. So if you can get that email address in real time, it's quite easy to re-engage with them actually whilst our visitors are actually on site. Talked about websites, newsletters. It's making sure that they're at the forefront of the user journey, not always at the back in some membership area. And then looking at things like retail promotions, and I think there was a conversation around retail and shops, and for us we're looking at ways of driving people to the stores, to the shops in the palaces, and that can be as simple as an email to their phone saying go here at 3 o'clock and show the email. It doesn't need, as a starter, we're saying it doesn't need to actually be integrated. You can count with a chalkboard how many people do it if you want, as a starter, and then if it takes off as an offer, then you'd start to look at the IT behind it. And so, having gone through all of that, the mindset, then it really is, I see CRM is actually a business change. It's not about putting a system in. It's about developing a customer engagement strategy and evolving the business's mindset and skills within the business to actually engage with their customers. It's refreshing hearing your talk earlier, the gentleman before talk, just because it's clearly thinking about mechanisms for engaging customers. It's that, and the system support it. And as I said, the CRM system provides capabilities. There is an organisational change piece, and it can be significant. If it is that people don't have the skills or the foresight or even the innovation, you do have to get them if you're going to drive this forward. And so my challenge to all these suppliers is always, and in supporting the business, is always saying, when they make these promises, it's how and by whom. So how are you going to, transform the visitor engagement, and who is going to do it? Which teams of people, organisationally? So let's not ask for a CRM system. And as I said, it's about customer engagement rather than asking for CRM systems. And yes, so let's ask for, sorry, I've got ahead of myself there. So yes, so let's ask for a customer engagement strategy. And if you look at the dictionary definition for engagement, I think it's a better fit. Establish a meaningful contact or connection with, involve someone in. I think for me in our sector that's a better language rather than a customer relationship management strategy or things like that. And just here, saying another touch on it, you don't actually need a CRM system to do good customer engagement. And we've touched on the mindset and innovation. I always look at I don't know how many people have coffee card, probably from their local coffee shop, which gets stamps on, free coffee when you fill it up. That's a great way of keeping customer loyalty. Very simple. Our guy should actually we hand them in when we've got all our coffees, and we should be able to put our email address on the back and enter into a competition, but he doesn't think that way. Merlin at Chessington World of Adventure, so they do you can get a Merlin pass, a year's a big discount for the annual pass for Merlin if you actually go to Chessington World of Adventure and buy it in January. And so that looks like a good offer, but actually, and it is, but what it forces is, it means the only people doing that are domestic, local audiences, because you're not going to come from York to do that. So it's a clever way of actually getting a load of data around people who are actually able to come and get that. Well, it's a very good offer. And so they created a data set of local people. And domestic audience and local audiences are the ones that you always like to engage, because they'll come again and again and again. At Hampton Court Palace, we have a local catchment of people, and we actually want to target that area, because they treat the palace as an amenity, which is what we want. National Trust Card recently, probably 2 years now ago, that's quite old, they put a barcode on the National Trust Card, and that's part of just the start of capturing when people visit and where, and you can see their thinking, and I get targeted emails now from them sort of saying what's on in my local National Trust properties. And again, they're just thinking, they've thought about it, they've done the systems implementation, and they've started to engage us. So they do have a CRM system, I know the guys at National Trust, and they've taken a lot of time getting it going, but they're clearly starting to use it, and customers are starting to benefit from it, as I'm sure they are. And finally, my WeightTrace Card. So I was involved in the early systems development for this, and the most interesting thing about this was that we were asked to develop a CRM system, and we discussed it, and they're very expensive. Customer loyalty systems are very expensive. But my team proposed that actually we just use an EPOS incentive, or a voucher, shopping voucher, and convert it into a card. And so that card is actually a penny off voucher with a unique identifier on it. And that used just standard existing systems and infrastructure. And it was just a report at the back end to work out which customers we'd emailed these cards to and which shops they'd spent. Very clever way, very cheap way of actually finding out which branch your customers use and tying up data in the back end of the system. I think they're developing a bigger CRM piece now, and they're quite a big organisation, and so I think again it's easy to get stuck in saying we need a CRM system to do everything. And so how do we change quickly? So I'm an advocate of program management, and I always say that programs deliver the outcomes, it delivers organisational change, projects deliver capabilities. And so when someone says to me, we've got a project, I always say, what's the business change? Or I ask, what's the business change you're trying to invoke here? Because actually it's the business change that I think should lead these kind of initiatives. And what does this mean when we say that? It's about looking at your organisation, it's coming up with a blueprint. So how are you going to do CRM? Do you have a centralised marketing team? Do you have a fragment or distributed marketing team? Very much depending on your organisation. You create the business change plan, looking at people and process, and then you deliver the capabilities at the end, is how I say. I think putting a CRM system at the start of all of that just flushes out the difficult bits after the implementation, which is, when I've observed, is always quite difficult. And so, moving on a bit, with HR, we'll start with your palaces. I've just got some slides here on how we're doing CRM. We've got a customer data and analytics stream as part of our digital strategy. Our digital strategy is made up of 5 areas: visitor journey. So we're focusing on the visitor journey. How do we engage our audiences, or the future audience, using technology? So that's looking at how people will engage with us in the future and readying our organisation. As part of that, it's asset management, making sure our assets are findable internally and that they're set up in such a way that we can make them available to our visitors. Analytics and customer data, and that's kind of the CRM piece in old language, as it were. And then the underlying infrastructure is needed to make it all work. And then the change piece, wrapping it all up, and that's the organisational change that we're going to have to go through to get ourselves ready for sort of the next generation of digital engagement, as it were. There's the purpose. You can read it, but it's about developing the capability to provide knowledge and insight of our visitors. It's enabling HRP to communicate effectively and meaningfully with our visitors, and creating new opportunities for the business to operate more effectively. So with that said as a purpose, we did quite a bit of thinking. There was a tendency to want a CRM system, I have to say. It's very difficult to not start to solutionise on all of this. And what we observed is that rarely does one size fit all. And so when we say we need when someone says we need a CRM system, you can say, well, actually, do we need a retail CRM system? That's a different set of features to a membership CRM system. And then you've got loyalty cards type functionality, which is not membership, but it's to drive return visits and things like that. And then, or is it a visitor attraction CRM, and this is where visitors will just come once and never come again. And so actually, we see these as, these are very different. They've got a similar underlying data model, if you want to get technical, but actually how you actually want to engage those groups is very different. And so we did a matrix. I won't go into this in too much detail, but we split CRM up into some chunks or some logical blocks as we see it. One is around contact relationship management. So that's one-to-one relationship. So that's when a customer or visitor phones you, or they email you email with a query or a question. It's a specific one-to-one relationship. Data capture and data quality. I think we've got 14 different forms on our website that we're trying to pull together. But it's how do you capture the data, how do you make sure it's usable, and how do you validate it. Campaign management. This is more traditionally around just email campaigns. Data integration, single view of the customer. So this is pulling all the different chunks of data you have in your organisation together to ultimately get a single view of customer. Analytics and business intelligence. And then finally, membership and donor service. And they're actually quite specific, membership and donor, because it is about renewals. It's also about moving people up. I think they call it the donor ladder or something, which is just trying to move up and ultimately to be a patron in our organisation. So it's quite a different set of needs from a system perspective. And finally, customer accounts. That's, do you provide some kind of online portal for customers to amend their preferences and change how they want you to talk to them. And what we've done is we've split this into what we call multi-channel marketing, CRM or customer contact management, and then business information analytics, and then finally the bottom one is kind of your content management or your website, really. And so if we looked at the market, we can see there's products here that kind of fit each of these areas, and so we're actually doing an incremental approach to this, and kicking off multi-channel marketing first. And so effectively just doing it in stages. And when we're done, we're going to end up with what we call the HRP, customer engagement or engagement system. So we're not calling it a CRM system. And so our approach, I mentioned, is 4 phases. The first phase is governance and our target operating model. So that's looking at the business change, the future business, how the business will be structured to do this. And then we're looking at doing email campaigns, and then customer contact management, and then finally working to a single view of customer. And on the back of that, we then move into the concept of segmentation, and there's phases after that, but we're just committing to the first 4 at the moment. As I mentioned, phase 1 is about governance. It's about, we have to train our staff. We have to train staff around Data Protection Act. We have to train staff around PCI, and not storing credit card details or coming up with ideas where you capture the credit card details and get them emailed into you or something like that. So these are critical aspects. We've also come up with a customer data charter, which is a set of principles that the organisation is committing to at the executive board level. And so this is how we will use customer data and our commitments to our customers. And this is about what we will do and what we won't do. And then, as I mentioned, define the target operating model. Phase 2 then is looking at email. And that's implementing an organisational-wide emailing engine. So I think we had about 4 about a year ago, and so we've got 1 now. And we had no way of coordinating what emails went from anyone, so it was not perfect, I have to say. So we've implemented an organisation-wide emailing engine, and we've linked as many data feeds to that as possible. We've pretty much got all the main ones now. And we're using that as our primary customer engagement tool. Phase 3 is going to be customer contact management, and this is the one-to-one relationships I mentioned, and this is around your sort of call centre strategy, really, and for us we've got a number of, I think we've got about 8 or 9 phone numbers that people can contact us on. They all go to different areas and different departments, So actually the business change here is how do you handle customer contacts. The system is there to just simplify it, and so we've got to have some discussions in the business around all these phone numbers, different departments, contacts going through to people's answer phones and things like that. So there's a wider piece there. And then finally, it's mentioned a single view of the customer, and then this is bringing the data back into probably another solution, which will start to allow us to pull together a single view of customers who, when they've been to the retail site, whether they visited us, whether they're a member, and all those categories. And the timing is in line with business needs and evolution. So we're doing this incrementally. I think my next slide says that. And we're using the agile approach to this. So very much about incremental delivery. So we're working with the business on a set of user stories. We deliver the solution. They use them, and then they say it's exactly what we wanted. That's not quite what we wanted. And it's working quite well. And progress to date. I've touched on this. So we've got a new email coordination group set up, part of the business change piece. We've got the HRP for the customer data charter. We've chosen .mailer as our emailing engine, which probably people know or use here. And we've pulled in 7 key data feeds so far, including our ticketing system, our retail system, and our membership system. So that, and our database now is up to 222,000 contacts. Previously, before we started, we only had 50,000 that we were confident of marketing to from a single place. So we're pulling the data together and working to cleanse it and bring in new feeds, new opportunities as we do exhibitions and things to grow that database. And so developing this idea of acquiring customer email addresses. Yes, and still to finish off is the business target operating model stuff, and we're also focusing on training key business users, and so handing over .mailer from being a systems sort of product solution to giving it to some trained business users who can start to develop their own campaigns. And that's almost done now. If anyone's getting bored, I don't have it in for time, will we? I'll whiz through these sometime. Yeah. I just want a quick word about software packages. The IT industry is very good for selling software packages to us. They sell integrated solutions or packages. Quite often they do a fitment exercise where they say it's 80% fit, 60% fit, and we will buy them. But there's always this debate in my mind about what you end up with. And I always say an organisation is like, if you imagine an organisation is like a hand. If you've had a system in the organisation for about 10 years, then there's a good chance it actually fits your organisation like a silk glove. It's been amended, developed. Ticketing systems, for example. These old ticketing systems quite often fit your organisation very well. You put a new ticketing system in, and the challenge is it hasn't, it's never going to fit exactly. And I always use the analogy that what you're going to get first of all is a gardening glove fit, and then you've got to then spend some time after evolving your solution to better fit your organisation as your organisation learns how to use it. And that's just something I always like to say, because people do quite often say, well, we'll buy a package, it's going to be great. But quite often you've got to buy a package and you've got to buy into a number of years of evolving it to actually suit your organisation and evolve as it evolves with the organisation. And so, as a summary, CRM systems introduce significant capabilities. There's no dispute about that. But the business needs to adopt the mindset to exploit any system, to exploit these capabilities in any system that's developed. And often this does require a wide organisational change. And my final line, as probably guessed, is, above all, let's talk about customer engagement strategies rather than CRM systems. And that's it. So, is there any questions on that?
Can I just ask, you say